The telephone rang, so I decided to answer it. You have to remember that for many years of my life, I was the director of a library. St. Andreas Bibliothek, St. Andrew's Library in the city of Copenhagen, one of the largest, in my opinion, the best, and actually the only Catholic lending library in a 5-nation area of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland, including all of Greenland. So we used to get a lot of telephone calls. And it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just getting ready to pack up my things and go home when the library telephone rang, and I decided I may as well answer it. I said, "Hello?" And a voice said, "Is it true what they say?" And I said, "It might be. It depends on what it is they say." And he said, "That a lot of the first popes were married and had wives." I could tell by the background noise that this telephone call came from a tavern, and that the caller was not completely sober, but I didn't mind. I've often found in my life that some of the best theology comes from first getting a little lubrication. So I answered, "Well, to the best of my knowledge, none of the popes have been married and had husbands. But it is true that some of the first popes were married and had a wife. They didn't have multiple wives, but yes, some of the first popes were married men." And he said, "Is this written down somewhere, or is it a secret?" And I said, "Well, for example, even in the Gospels, we read how St. Peter was married, and there was the story of how Jesus cured his mother-in-law. It's right there in the Gospels, right there in the Bible." And he said, "What does St. Peter have to do with the popes?" And I said, "Well, okay, it's true that in the early centuries of the church, the definition of the Pope was the successor of St. Peter, the Bishop of Rome, the successor of St. Peter. And since St. Peter was not his own successor, the earliest lists of popes did not include Peter." And he said, "No! The Bible has nothing to do with the Catholic Church." And he hung up. I suspect he had just lost a bet. But his point stands. It's a good question. What does the Bible have to do with the Catholic Church? Well, among other things, the Catholic Church wrote the Bible. Certainly the entire New Testament was written by the Catholic Church. Those Gospels I mentioned, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they were written by Catholics for Catholics, at least from the point of view of the Catholic Church, where we view ourselves as the continuation of that very first church. We existed for generations before there was a New Testament. There were more than the 4 Gospels written in the first 100 years of the church's history. It was an early church council that said 4 is enough. There are the other Gospels, some of the other Gospels, the church said may, in fact, be divinely inspired. We're not saying they are. We're not saying they're not. We are saying that these 4, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were divinely inspired, and that they say all that needs to be said by the Gospels. And all of this New Testament is divinely inspired. Even the shape of the Old Testament as we know it was determined by the Catholic Church. It is important to be a Bible-believing Christian. The Catholic Church teaches very directly that you must be a Bible-believing Christian. So if you are a Bible-believing Christian, you should thank the Catholic Church.